All right, let's dive into some relationship talk today, huh? We're going to be looking at patterns and red flags and all that fun stuff.
Always a good time, right?
Well, it can be tricky. We've got this article here, and it claims to know how to tell if a woman has had a lot of romantic partners in the past.
Oh, that's a bold claim.
Yeah, and before we even get started, I want to be clear, like, we're not here to just accept everything this article says at face value. We're going to break it down, think critically.
Definitely. Relationships are complicated.
Hmm.
We can't reduce someone's worth or try to predict their behavior just based on their past.
Exactly. This article starts off by saying that knowing a woman's romantic history can, like, save you time and heartache.
Hmm.
It even suggests that women don't really change much over time. It's like saying once they've had a certain number of relationships, they're, I don't know, damaged goods or something.
That's a pretty narrow view, don't you think? I mean, past relationships definitely shape us, but people can learn and grow.
Yep.
It's like if you have a bad experience at a restaurant, you don't swear off eating out forever, do you?
Definitely
You
not.
probably just learn from it. Maybe you choose different restaurants or try different dishes next time.
That's a good point.
Relationships are kind of similar. They give us chances to grow and change.
I like that analogy. So instead of assuming someone's going to repeat the same mistakes, maybe we should be asking them, like, what did you learn from your past relationships? How has it made you who you are today?
Exactly. It's about recognizing the growth, not just focusing on the number.
Right. So this article goes on to list these five strategies or like mistakes that it claims can reveal a woman's extensive relationship history.
Okay, let's hear them.
The first one is all about analyzing her social media, like if she's got tons of likes and comments from men.
Social media, always a source of anxiety for some people.
I know, right? But does a like on Instagram automatically mean someone wants to be more than friends?
I mean, social media is often a highlight reel. It's not the whole story. And if you're constantly worrying about your partner's online interactions, maybe a better question to ask is, do they make you feel secure and prioritized in real life? Or, like, do you have healthy boundaries when it comes to your online interactions? Those are more important than how many likes someone's getting, right?
You're right. Those are really practical things to focus on.
Yeah.
Okay, the next point the article makes is that if a woman uses that phrase, you men are all the same, that's a sure sign she's got baggage from past relationships.
Yeah. While generalizations aren't fair, put yourself in their shoes for a second. If someone said to you, you women are all the same, would you automatically assume they've dated a ton of women?
Probably not.
Maybe they just had a couple of really bad experiences that left them feeling hurt.
It's like saying all restaurants are terrible because you had one bad meal. Doesn't really make sense, does it?
Not really. Instead of jumping to conclusions, why not try to have a conversation about what's behind those generalizations? You might find there are some unresolved issues that need addressing.
So again, communication is key. Okay, this next one from the article might be a little sensitive, but it says that a woman's level of sexual experience is a giveaway. It even suggests that having too much experience is a red flag.
Ah, yes, the double standard rears its head.
Right.
Why is it that men's sexual experience is often seen as a positive thing, but women's is treated with suspicion? It shouldn't be about some outdated notion of experience. It should be about the connection you have with your partner.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, do we have a healthy and fulfilling sexual dynamic? Do we respect each other's boundaries? Those are the questions that really matter.
You're so right. It's about the quality of the connection, not some number from the past. Now, the article also claims that if a woman is uncomfortable discussing past relationships, she's hiding something.
While it's true that sometimes being reluctant to talk about the past can indicate unresolved issues, remember that not everyone feels comfortable sharing those intimate details right away.
Yeah, it's about finding that balance between healthy curiosity and respecting boundaries.
Absolutely. Notice how your partner approaches the conversation. Are they shutting down completely, or are they just being hesitant? If it's the latter, maybe try saying something like, I understand if you're not ready to share everything right now, but I'm here to listen when you are. You want to create a safe space for them to open up at their own pace.
That's a great way to encourage open communication without being pushy.
Exactly. Trust is built over time. It can't be forced.
So true. Okay, last point from the article. It says that gradually finding out a woman has a large network of male acquaintances is a red flag.
Wait, so having male friends is automatically suspicious?
That's what they're implying, yeah.
It's perfectly normal and healthy to have friends of the opposite sex. If we reverse the genders here, would it raise the same red flags? Probably not. We need to challenge those biases and remember that trust and communication are crucial. If something feels off, Talk to your partner directly instead of letting suspicion build up.
So instead of jumping to conclusions, maybe try saying, hey, I noticed you have a lot of close male friends. Tell me about them. Just be curious and open, not accusatory.
Exactly. And remember, you deserve a relationship built on trust and mutual respect. Don't let these generalized claims determine how you see your partner.
This is really eye-opening. We've talked about some common misconceptions and how important communication, respect, and understanding are in relationships. It's about going beyond the surface and recognizing that everyone's story is unique.
And those principles apply to everyone, no matter their gender. We all have past experiences that influence us. We should approach relationships with empathy and open minds.
Definitely. Now, in the next part of our deep dive, we'll be exploring the article's claim that past relationships can actually influence present behavior. We'll also talk about how to identify those real red flags and how to prioritize your own well-being in relationships. Stick with us.
So welcome back. As we dig deeper into this article about relationship patterns, I'm curious, what really stood out to you from that first part?
I think what struck me most was how important it is to, communicate instead of just making assumptions about people.
Yeah.
It's easy to get caught up in those superficial signs, and then you miss the bigger picture of how someone's past might be influencing their present, not defining it, but shaping it.
Right, exactly. It's like you're reading the first page of a book and you think you already know the whole story. There's so much more depth to discover.
Exactly.
And speaking of assuming we know the whole story, this article goes on to make a pretty sweeping claim, and it basically says that women become less invested in relationships with each new partner.
Oh, wow.
As if there's a limited supply of love to give or something.
Yeah. It almost feels like they're suggesting that a woman's capacity for love just diminishes over time, which, I don't know, it feels a little reductive.
Yeah. It's like every relationship, no matter where it falls in our timeline, offers these unique lessons and opportunities for growth.
Right.
It's not about diminishing returns on investment. It's more about evolving in our understanding of ourselves and what we're looking for.
So it's not the number of partners someone's had. It's more about the quality of those experiences and what they learned from them.
Exactly.
This article goes on to use a really strange analogy. It compares relationships to narcotics for women. It's like the more relationships she has, the less enjoyable they become. I don't know. It's a weird comparison.
It is a strange comparison, and I think it kind of diminishes the whole idea of human connection, right?
Yeah.
Instead of getting hung up on this investment decline, whatever that means, it's more helpful to think about the patterns someone might bring from their past, both good and bad. Let's say someone's been in relationships where their needs were constantly dismissed. Well, they might be more cautious in a new relationship about expressing those needs. Right?
I can see that.
It makes sense.
Yeah. That reminds me of a friend of mine who always seemed to end up dating emotionally unavailable partners. And it wasn't until she recognized that pattern that she was able to break free and find someone who truly valued her.
Absolutely. That's a great example of how understanding those past patterns can be really positive. Instead of judging someone for their relationship history, try to understand the context.
Okay.
Ask them questions. What are you looking for? What are your non-negotiables?
Yeah.
Those kinds of open-ended questions can tell you so much more about a person than just knowing how many people they've dated.
It's about recognizing that everyone's coming with their own story, and those stories are valuable. They're insights, not just red flags. Right. Now, this article does make one good point. It talks about toxicity in relationships. It warns about, accumulating bad behaviors and wasting time. It kind of makes it sound like the more partners you've had, the more baggage you bring with you.
Well, while I think the way they're framing it is a little problematic, it's definitely true that we should be paying attention to unhealthy patterns. But the thing is, these patterns aren't unique to people who've had a lot of relationships.
Right.
I mean, anyone can exhibit toxic behaviors regardless of their past. Let's imagine someone who's in a long-term relationship that, over time, became emotionally abusive. They might carry those scars, those insecurities into their next relationship, even if that was their only previous relationship.
It's like saying that someone who's been in a car accident is automatically a bad driver. I mean, the accident doesn't define their skills, but it might make them a little more cautious.
Exactly. So instead of getting fixated on the number of partners, focus on the quality of the interactions, the respect level, the overall dynamic. Can you communicate openly and honestly? Do you feel safe? Do you feel supported? Those are the things that really tell you if a relationship is healthy.
So how can we tell the difference between genuine red flags and just echoes of past hurts? Because the article doesn't really get into that.
Yeah, that's a good question. You really have to look for those patterns of behavior that are disrespectful, controlling, manipulative. Like, if someone's always blaming their ex for everything, that's probably a sign they're not taking responsibility for their own actions, right?
Right.
Or if they're trying to isolate you from your friends and family, that's a big red flag. That's controlling behavior.
It sounds like it comes down to trusting your gut and paying attention to those patterns of behavior rather than getting stuck on the number of relationships someone's had in the past. It's about recognizing that red flags aren't about the past. It's about what's happening right now, how they're treating you.
Exactly. Pay attention to those things. And remember, you always have the right to walk away from any relationship that isn't serving you well. You deserve to be with someone who respects you, values your opinions, supports your growth.
It's so important to remember that, to value yourself.
Absolutely.
We talk a lot about red flags in romantic relationships, but these principles apply to all kinds of relationships, friendships, family, even professional ones.
You're absolutely right. Healthy boundaries are so important no matter what kind of relationship it is.
It's about protecting ourselves.
Right. Protecting your well-being and creating a space for healthy communication and respect.
This has been really insightful. I mean, we've challenged some assumptions and we've shifted the focus to what actually matters. Respect, communication, that commitment to growth together.
And remember, you have the power to choose who you let into your life and what kind of relationship you build. Don't let fear control you. Trust your instincts and prioritize your own well-being.
I think this conversation has given me so much to think about, not just about my own relationships, but about how I approach other people's relationships too. We've really covered a lot of ground, and we've given some good advice on how to navigate those tricky relationship patterns. So
We've really covered a lot of ground today, haven't we? I mean, we started by challenging some of those like surface level assumptions, and now we're talking about how our past experiences, even the tough ones, can shape our relationships in the present. It feels like we've really gone beyond just debunking stuff and into like genuinely insightful territory.
yeah, it's been a great conversation. And I think, the biggest takeaway for me is that relationships aren't about like keeping score or checking boxes. It's about connecting with someone, growing together, respecting each other.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up our deep dive into this relationship patterns and red flags article, what are some things you hope our listeners are taking away from all of this? Well, I hope people are walking away feeling empowered, knowing that their past relationships don't define them and that they shouldn't judge others solely on their past either. It's about understanding that everyone has their own story, and those stories are opportunities to connect, not to judge or be suspicious.
Right. Like we've been saying, communication is so important. Instead of making assumptions, ask questions. Really listen to what the other person is saying and be open to different perspectives. And this doesn't just apply to romantic relationships, right?
Exactly. It could be a friend, a family member, a romantic partner. It doesn't matter. Being open and honest with each other is the foundation of any strong relationship. Along with communication, I hope folks are also taking away a better understanding of how important self-awareness is.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we all come into relationships with our own baggage, our own patterns, and being aware of those things is so important, both for our own personal growth and for the health of our relationships. It's like that saying, you can't change what you don't acknowledge.
So true. Once you can acknowledge those patterns, you can start making conscious choices about how you show up in your relationships. Maybe you realize you have a tendency to people pleaser or avoid conflict. And once you see that, you can start setting healthy boundaries and communicating your needs more clearly.
That's such a powerful shift. It's like instead of feeling trapped by your past, you can use it to create healthier relationships in the future. So as we wrap up, I always like to leave our listeners with something to think about, something to ponder. Do you have any final thoughts?
Here's a question to consider. How can you use what you've learned from past relationships, both your own and your partner's, to create even better, more fulfilling connections in the future? It's not about dwelling on the past, it's about using those experiences to learn and grow. Because ultimately, we're all in this together, right? We're all trying to figure out love and connection, and the best way to do that is through understanding, empathy, and being open with each other.
I love that. I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time for another fascinating exploration.